should be, yeah, that's good enough. And this one, 1 second. Okay, so allow me to, wait, am I in my own stream? Can I be in my own stream? That's the thing I can do. Oh, okay. That's fine. Got it. That makes more sense now. The first thing I'm going to say is in 2026, you should definitely be using large language models. You should definitely be, um, I don't care. I personally think that ChatGPT is the best, but if you're using Claude, um, Google Gemini, whichever one, it doesn't matter. Um, a big, what's the one, Big Think or whatever, the Chinese one, whatever, whichever one it is, you should be using large language models. Large language models are, how can I put this in the context of the average person, like for everyday life? All information tends toward, so intelligence is a level. You have people like myself that are highly intelligent, and you have some people that are below average intelligence, and you have people that are mentally ill. Society is trying to convince us, and this is what I've been struggling with, that below average intelligent people are below average, but underneath them there is a level of mental illness, right? Society wants us to believe that there's a level of intelligence, and then above intelligence there's a level of mental illness, and that's the conflict. Every day I walk around and I have people looking at my skin complexion and my hair texture and thinking that I'm some kind of idiot savant. It's like I'm not an idiot savant, I'm just intelligent. It's not that there's a weakness or a broken part of my brain. It's my inability to deal with stupid fucking people that causes the conflict with you. Not with me, but with you. Your inability to be able to understand at the same level that I understand at, and me trying to communicate to you with being decent, kind, honest, and humble and respectful, and your lack of understanding automatically transforming into you wanting to be childish and inconsiderate and disrespectful. Hi, welcome to the screen. Welcome to the stream. That's the conflict. You don't want to rise to the level of the person that is better than you or has more knowledge than you or has a little bit higher understanding than you. You want to default to being immature and childish. So in the context of that, it creates this conflict between us to where I'm lacking in some area at this moment in time because we're all ignorant. And I'm trying to understand what it is that you need from me from my position of being a little bit more intelligent, but you have an experience and you have understanding that I don't. And instead of you recognizing my intelligence, you want to elevate me to this guy is, he acts like he's really smart, but clearly he's African American, so he must be challenged in some way. There's no possibility that me as a Caucasian, that this African American is somehow more intelligent or knows more than I do. So I need to reduce him from being just somehow retardedly gifted. And that need, like, that's the conflict in the world. This idea that you are inherently better because you are inherently better is a universal thing that all humans suffer from. We all suffer from this idea that we are the best, that we are the smartest, and it's like the orcs. The biggest is the bestest. Like, we all suffer from this idea that we are the biggest and we are the bestest, you know? And the funny thing about that is you can stand next to somebody that is physically larger than you in stature and still feel like I'm still somehow better than you. But the person, and this is why I don't believe in narcissism, because if you're 6'6" and I'm 5'2", and you're looking down at me and I'm looking up at you, even if I can physically beat you in a fight, your capacity to see me as smaller than you doesn't make you narcissist. It just means that you have a correct perception of the world. The problem with humans is that we shouldn't be operating from that level of bullshit. Like, we're not animals, so it doesn't make any sense for you to be bigger than me and then operate from I'm bigger than him, so I'm better than him. It's I'm bigger than this person. That's it. There doesn't need to be an extra after that. I'm bigger than this person. I'm smaller than this person. I'm less attractive than this person. I'm more attractive than this person. You don't need to add an extra proof after that. The capacity to form a proof is the first step. The reason why females nag, and I'm just going to say it in that context because it's just going to translate easier into what I'm going to say later. The reason why women nag all the time is because the first step to solving a problem is identifying the problem and then quantifying the problem. You have to identify the problem, then you have to quantify it into a value that you can understand. And as soon as you quantify it into a value you understand, you reduce it down to what it needs to be, right? So I'm cold, right? It's cold. I'm cold. It's quantifying it into something that is a value that resonates with me specifically. So now I'm cold. It's not just cold. I'm cold. If it's 90 degrees outside and you're cold, are you cold? Right? Now you have to take the information, that your internal information, your external information, and you have to quantify it into something relevant. So it's not I'm cold, turn the heat up, and then I come over to you as a person is like, it's 90 degrees outside. Why do you want me to turn the heat on? It's not cold. Well, I'm cold. Okay. What empirical values correlate this information to something that is useful and tangible? If you're cold and it's below the ambient temperature that we would consider comfortable for warm, then you being cold would justify turning the heat on. But if you're cold and it's above the ambient temperature that we would consider to be warm, then there's another correlation. There's another value that needs to be added there. So when you're whining and complaining and bitching and moaning and arguing and fighting, that's the first step to problem solving. Identifying a problem is the first step to problem solving, which is the reason why I get irritated with people that say, oh, you just have to watch what you say and your words have power and you have to speak things into existence. No, that's not how life works. You don't say shit. I can't say I have $1 million fucking dollars in my pocket and then put my hands in my pocket and pull $1 million fucking dollars out. It's not how life works. You don't get to just say whatever the fuck you want to say and it be true. And that's the conflict with the way that we address the realities of the world that we inherit. Because we are raised with this ideological Christianity or whatever religion, I default to Christianity because that's what I was raised as. I was raised in a Christian nation as a non-Christian. So even though I was raised as a non-Christian in a Christian nation, I identified at a very young age the idea of good and goodness with the relationship of Judeo-Christianity and Abraham's religion as a young kid, even though I didn't go to church, even though I wasn't being forced to go to church with my father. My upbringing, my father and my mother separated when I was younger. My father married my stepmother. My mother married my stepfather. So I grew up from as long as I can remember in a household with a with a mother that held the title of wife and a stepfather that held the title of the father. And when I was with my father, I grew up with a father that held the title of a husband and a stepmother that held the title and a stepmother that held the title of both mother and stepmother. So that was my upbringing. That's the way that I was raised all my life. So my desire to want to be a husband and father when I got older is not weird. It's not unusual. It's not strange. It's just society. Society gives us values that are bullshit. I spent the first half of my life. I spent the first 5 or 6 years living with my mother, and then I left my mother and stayed with my father for 10 years. I left my father and went and stayed with my mother for 3 years. I left my father when I was around 16 to stay with my mother. I graduated high school at the age of 17, and I moved out of my mother's house around the age of 18. So from 16 to 18, which is about 2.5 years, was about the most of the time I spent with my mother. But the rest of my life was spent living with her, and most of my interactions with as an adult was with my mother. But from the age of being born to about 6, which is the stuff that I don't remember, most of that was with my mother. And most of that was with my mother before she got married. So my foundation as an African American male was with a single woman in a single woman household. Leaving my mother and staying with my father in a household married without the influence of having to go to church, I learned about the foundational core values of what it means to be a boy and become a man. And there's things that you just indirectly learn in that relationship. One of the most important things that young boys learn from being raised by their fathers is you don't have a fucking vagina, so you don't get to live in this world the way that women live in this world. We don't operate from the same place in this world that women operate from, and you don't get to do the same thing that girls do because you're not a girl, and the things that girls are allowed to do are not the same thing that boys are allowed to do. Men and women, boys and girls live in different realities. My definition for what makes a woman is, it's still loose, I'm still working on it, but it's basically a mind that has had its, a mind that has had its, that has had, a mind that has had its, how did I write it? A mind which has been influenced by ovaries. And for men, it's a mind which has been influenced by testes. It's basically the interaction that the mind has, the evolution of the mind being influenced by ovaries. A mind which has been influenced by ovaries for women, and for men, it's a mind that has been influenced by testes. Because as organs in our body that produce different hormones and stuff like that, it's going to create an influence. It's going to transform you hormonally into what you're supposed to be. And the whole point of what I'm saying, this is like a long tangent because I don't have anything structured, but the whole point of what I'm saying is, growing up that way, I learned certain core values. I push against religion, not because I don't believe in God. I do believe in a God. I push against religion because the core foundations of who we are directly related to the fact that we come from a certain place. Our mothers and fathers are on this planet to, well, they're not on this planet to do anything. Our mothers and fathers have a role on this planet for us individually that allow us to be able to better understand who we are. And as we interact with each other on this planet, we can learn a lot about who we are from our mothers and fathers' influences directly. Who we are socially is influenced by the standards that are outlined by society. And there's not a lot that we can learn about who we are from the standards outlined by society, because the goal of society is to manipulate and control and distort you in such a way as to get as much from you as it possibly can, while giving back to you as little as possible. And it is the role of our parents to balance that, make sure that you know your worth enough so that you can demand more from society than you give to society, which is what creates the condition of society is going to try to take as much from you as it possibly can while giving back to you as little as possible. That's where that relationship balance comes in at. All of that is governed by this ideology of religion as an overtone, right? So this religious overtone is the foundational conflict. I personally charge religion with all of the bullshit. I believe that all of the bullshit that exists in the world right now, to include the institutional racism, is a direct consequence of European ideology and in their use of corrupted religion as a justification for bullshit. And that's just my position. It always will be my position, and until that's always going to be my position, it will never change for the rest of my life until I see the idea of race disappear and a proactive desire to universally address the individual conflicts of everyday people in the world. What should be good for the individual should be what's good for the group. What's best for me, what's best for Paul Emerson is what should be best for everyone. And Caucasians have allowed themselves to believe that it's okay that one of us is suffering if millions of non-whites have it worse than we do. It's okay. You'll get your chance to make it to the top, you know? So that's a super long tangent to get to the point of why, it's important for young boys to be raised by their fathers, but I don't have a clear path. There's no easy, when I'm making these videos, the problem that I have is I need to establish standard for my proofs of how I'm communicating what I'm trying to communicate, right? When I say certain things from me, I've spent a lot of time, okay, there was a time in my life, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was when I was talking to my father. You know what? This is what it was. And this is this is going to be a tangent, another tangent. But this is what it really boiled down to. Me and my father was having a conversation. When me and him were actually conversating. I was in my 20s. He asked me a very humble, specific, direct question. He said, "What do you know about woolly mammoths?" I said, "Not that much." He said, and this is the question he asked me, and this is what fundamentally shaped the way that I deal with European ideology, as I now call it. He said, if the woolly mammoth was the way that it was, and it was the way that a woolly mammoth is, imagine, take everything you know about woolly mammoth from now and think about the woolly mammoth, right? I'm not saying that it did exist or that it did not exist. This is not this conversation. Everything you understand and know about the woolly mammoth as it was described, take that in for a second. The question he asked me was this. He said, if the woolly mammoth was the way that it was described, if it was the animal that they said that it was and it lived on the world the way that they said that it lived on the earth, what did the woolly mammoth eat? What was its source of food? The environment that you associate with the woolly mammoth, the type of life that it lived, what did it eat? We know that elephants eat grass. We know that they eat grass. We know that elephants eat a lot of grass, tons of grass. We know that a woolly mammoth is supposed to be a creature that lived in cold tundra environments, right? They should have been living in cold tundra environments where vegetation would have been scarce, but they would have needed more food than what the average elephant consumes because of their size and the type of cold environment that they lived in. When you get an image, propaganda, when you get an image of a woolly mammoth, you don't get a tundra, low shrub tundra cold environment with running water, because that's where they would have lived. The image they give you is of a large elephant migrating through glacial ice like it's a freaking polar bear. Only polar bears can live in those environments because the animals they eat, the animals they live off of, hunt in the ocean. But you can't have a giant herbivore migrating through glaciers and glaciers and tundra regions of the earth, because it wouldn't make any sense for them. Why would a herbivore leave grass to migrate through snow? To what? To what? And I'm not saying that they didn't exist. I'm saying these are the images that Europeans give us, and we don't question the information that they're giving to us. We just go with it. It's just like, oh, okay, this is what's being said, right? So when you think critically about the world and the reality of the things that are being said and given to you, it generates deeper fundamental questions, right? That was the question he asked me that shaped the way that I considered the world that I lived in. Because his follow-up position was this. He said, the reason why they give you this image of the woolly mammoth and they show you these Arctic snow regions that they lived in was so that they could justify cavemen eating these animals as a source of food, instead of the reality of them being cannibals. Now, this idea that humans have about cannibalism as this barbaric, savage part of the human condition is a weird reality, but it does illustrate the idea that Neanderthals and Homo erectus and all these other European hominids were living in these glaciatic environments. They weren't. The reason, so what's important for geologists, what's important for European anthropologists is this desire to use science to validate their claims from a biased position, to show that there is an inherent distinction between European, Caucasian lineages on Earth and the Africans, right? They want to make sure that there's a deviation and a separation, and the reason is because of their 300 years of slavery. If you as a culture create a foundation where you say that some people are superior, some people are inferior, and nature shows you who's superior and who's inferior, if you do that, if you say that out loud as a group, and you stand on a platform with your chest stuck out, and you shout it to the universe, right? And the more evidence you find that constantly puts you into the category of being inferior, when you're the one, it's like the younger child. Remember the analogy I started with, the 6'6" guy and the 5'2" guy, and the 5'2" guy's looking at the 6'6" guy and saying I'm superior, and the 6'2" guy's looking down like, I don't even understand what you're trying to say. That's what's going on. Europeans are like the younger child, and the older child has not really put his foot down on the younger child yet, because the humility and the passion and the respect that the older child has for the younger child is always there. So no matter how much the younger child tries to push this idea like, I'm stronger, I'm better, I'm more powerful, the older child is like, I've just been holding back because I respect you and I love you. That's the relationship that Europeans have with the rest of the planet. The rest of the planet understands, like, you are not the person, you are not the main character. You can keep saying that you're the main character, but you're not the main character. I'm not arrogant enough to put myself in the main character role. You keep telling me that this is my role. You keep telling me that this is the character that I was cast for, but I'm not really trying to be that character. I just want to be a part of this planet and be humble. And I'm speaking in the context of like global populations. I just want to be humble and a part of this planet and live a good life. Europeans are like, no, we are superior because we invented all this stuff and we've separated ourselves from the rest of the life on the planet. We are the dominant culture and we are divine and we come from this God source and we're superior in every which way. The rest of the world's like, none of that really matters. The only thing that matters is food, water, shelter, and love. So all that ego stuff you got going on is not relevant, right? This all correlates back to this idea that my father opened up with me when it came to these woolly mammoths, because Europeans never lived in Arctic tundra conditions because it's not possible. It's not possible for humans pre-fire, pre-Stone Age to live in those regions. They lived on the fringe of what we would. The truth is, they were just African, right? Like, if you want to just be blunt about it, the reality is that they were just African. They were just, Semitic to dark-skinned African. All of the people on the earth were all Africans, and the whole source of all humanity comes from Africa. The first people to migrate out of Africa to become Asians and Europeans and islanders were, in fact, all Africans. There was a time on this earth where every group of people across the entire globe, to include the Americans and the South Americans, would have genetically been identified as Africans. And even back then, if you would have done a genetic trace and a genetic heritage, and if you would have did DNA, you would have discovered that there were genetic markers in them that deviated across all spectrums of the globe, because your genes are not just your genes are not just influenced by the region of the planet that you're on. Your genes deviate from the food that you're consuming, right? The biggest deviation in genetic material on the planet comes from the flora and fauna that you're consuming, which is the reason why Neanderthals are described as living in ice, right? Ice age hunter gatherers, because the reason why I show you this idea of them living in snow and making these tools and crawling all over these mountains and hunting these woolly mammoths is because it's supposed to invoke in you this idea like they must have been really smart to be able to live in snow and hunt woolly mammoths and survive and create fire and use these tools to overcome nature. Nature's not smart. The woolly mammoth wouldn't have been smart enough to live in a region that didn't support its existence. So it wouldn't have been there. It would not have been there. It would have been down in the regions of the world where the grass was growing, and it would have been able to survive and probably below freezing environmental temperatures, but not necessarily in regions that were heavily covered in snow, that were heavily covered in glaciated ice, that were tundras. It wouldn't have been able to live in those environments because it didn't have the capacity to uproot grass. And if it ate food that was freezing, it would have lowered its natural body temperature, and it would have caused a need for higher calories, which would have ultimately resulted in a more consumption of more food, which would have just been a snowball cascade effect. So that's not what was going on. But these propaganda, this ideology of how this information is spread is why we have the issue we have with the idea of race and religion and black and white and all this other these missed points. And the Mises and Life system kind of, the idea of it is to build these axioms, but it's hard to build axioms because every time I try to build one axiom, there's 1,000 different misinformations that have to be addressed with one axiom. And how do I make one axiom and address 1,000 misinformation? There's no real easy way to do that. And to put things into context requires the context to be formed before I can put it into context. And how do I do that? So that's pretty much the conflict. That's what I've been dealing with since I started. Which is another reason why when it comes to large language models, there's this condition where you can kind of get rid of your own noise by utilizing them. And that's pretty much where I'm headed with all of this stuff. But yeah, it's just a rant. I don't know I don't know what else to do or how else to start this. There's too much stuff going on in my life to not rant. But the other side of the rant is the Mises and Life system, the actual structure. It's basically applied science, and it's replacing religion with science is what the Mises and Life system is all about. And when I was younger, I'm trying to trace back the conversation that I was just having. When I was younger, because like I said, I wasn't raised religion. I wasn't raised in a household of religion. My mother was heavily religious, and her, I never really fully became Christian from what I can remember when I was staying with my mother before I moved in with my father. But when I moved in with my father, there was never really a need to, there was a habit, but not a desire to be a Christian. And staying with my father, he didn't really force the religion on us. So there were times when I would ask, like, hey, can I go to church with the other kids or whatever? And I went a couple times, but I would just fall asleep. It was very boring to me. Church was boring. So there came a point where I was just like, I don't really want to go to church anymore because every time I go to church, I wind up falling asleep, and it's kind of rude to go over to somebody's house and go to sleep. So there's no need for me to go to church if it's just going to be boring. And so my father never made me go anymore. So everyone's running around with this idea like, I'm Christian, I'm Christian, I'm Christian, I'm Christian, I'm a good person because I'm a Christian. And they would ask me, and I'd be like, well, I don't really know. Either way, I don't really know. I don't really buy into the BS. So I struggled with whether I was Christian or not Christian for a while. And then once I turned around 16 or 17, by the time I moved back in with my mother, and me and my mother had conflicts about my existence in a Christian household as a non-Christian. The found without really putting a lot of my family business out on the internet, when it came to the relationship that I have with my mother and my stepfather, and my stepfather's bad habits, I'll just say that that's really what made me stop wanting to be a Christian. There was something personal that happened between my mother and my stepfather, and there was a condition that happened. There was a thing that my mother had to do when it came to her being a wife and having to support her husband, and there was all this bullshit energy, and I was living my life just chilling, and everything was good, and things happened, and my stepfather was gone for an extended period of time, and then he came back, and then when he came back, it was like, we're going to go to church because we're going to be a loving household. And it's like, you're not. Based on my age of 16 and understanding ethics and morality and having a father figure that existed in my life before you, you don't qualify as a good person from my perspective as a 6-year-old kid. I'm being humble, I'm being respectful, I'm being honest, I'm being a decent person, but you don't qualify as a good person right now. So I don't understand why I, as a 6-year-old kid that's just chilling living my life, should have to change my entire lifestyle because of some shit that you as an adult can't get right. Why do I have to suffer because you don't want to do what you're supposed to do as a husband and as a father? Why does that have to fall back on me? So me and my mother got into this conflict because my mother always mediated between me and my stepfather. Me and my stepfather never had an opportunity to have a relationship because it was always like, he's my son, like this possessive ownership. He's my son, and he's gonna do what I tell him to do, and you're not gonna have a relationship with my son because you have to come through me to go to him. So me and my stepfather never really had a chance to be men. Like women act like, this is the thing. There is a relationship between men and boys that is natural. As long as an adult man is not trying to murder or injure permanently a young child, the relationship between boys and men needs to be left to boys and men so that young boys can become men. If I can't at the age of 15 or 16 fight off an adult man, I need to understand that so that I can be well-rounded enough as a young man to be able to navigate the world of men. And this is the reason why girls and women cannot raise boys. How can I, as a young boy, become an adult man without the experience of having to deal with adult men as a young boy? Because I physically am not strong enough to fight against adult men. So what would happen is young boys would form groups that would allow ourselves to defend ourselves from adult men in a normal capacity, but society eliminates that out of nature, so it's not necessary. So since that's not necessary, we don't have to do that. But what we wind up getting stuck into is this mental paradigm that is equal to girls, right? Young boys wind up behaving the same way young girls behave because we don't have the pressure put on us that we should have naturally having to compete against men, right? Boys should be competing against men. Girls should be competing against women. Society has put young boys and young girls in the same fucking box and has made us believe that we are equal and we're not. We don't operate from the same energy. We don't have the same forces at work against us in society. So we shouldn't have the same, we shouldn't be operating from the same vantage point when it comes to becoming an adult. Young boys should not be trying to become women, and young girls should not be trying to become men because we can't compete in those arenas anyway. I can't be a woman as a 16-year-old boy, so why should I be trying to become my mother? And my sisters can't become men. They can't compete against men, so why should they be trying to become men? There's no need. It's not necessary to waste energy in that regard. But that's the world. That's the snowflake generation. That's what you guys are moving into. So within this conflict of my stepfather and my mother and me, had this unnecessary bullshit about you're gonna go to church because we're gonna tell you you're gonna go and you're gonna have to do what you want to. You're gonna have to do it whether you like it or not. And so my mother's like, get ready to go to church. Let's go now. So I have to stop playing video games and put on church clothes and get up at 9 o'clock in the morning to leave the house to go to church, even though I don't want to. And this is pretty much what made me stop really wanting to deal with religion, because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't the one that was misbehaving. I wasn't the one that was being childish. I wasn't the one being immature. I wasn't operating from a position of I'm better or I'm superior. I was operating from this person in this house is doing the wrong thing. So because this person in this house is doing the wrong thing, all of us has to change who we are so that they could be a better person. But if I'm already a good person, why should I have to change who I am so that they could be a good person? Why does that negative, how does this adult inability to behave mean that I have to change my being in a good position? I am behaving. I am doing the right thing. I am obedient. I am following the rules to within the limitations of being a 6-year-old kid. Why do I have to go the extra step to fix myself when there's nothing fucking wrong with me so that they can fix themselves? Like, how does that translate? So we got to this big giant debate. And then I was all huffy and puffy and upset and emotional. And my mother's like, what's wrong? I was like, I don't want to go to fucking church. Well, I didn't say I don't want to go to fucking church. I said I don't want to go to church. And she's like, well, why don't you want to go to church? I was like, because I'm not interested in going to church. I haven't done anything that merits me needing to go, and I don't feel like I should have to go. Everything was fine. We were all perfectly okay until you brought him back. And you bringing him back has dynamically changed the environment that we live in, and I don't understand why it should have to change. I don't understand why him coming back should have to change something that wasn't broken to begin with. Everything was fine. Like, he has his issues. I shouldn't have to change who I am because he has his issues. You're making the whole house change because of him, and you're forcing me to do something because of him, and I don't understand why. If you would have wanted me to go to church because you just wanted me to go, that would make sense. But how is me going to church going to fix him? I shouldn't have to suffer for that. It's like, well, you're not really suffering. We just want to be a Christian household, and we want to, and like, I get all of that. But why didn't you want to be a Christian household last week when he wasn't fucking here? I didn't say fucking. Why didn't you want to be a Christian household last week when he wasn't here? Well, all of a sudden he comes back and now we have to go to church. I don't want to have to go to church under those pretenses. It's not fair. Well, I don't understand why you're upset. I'm upset because you're making me go to church when I don't want to go. And this is the dynamic between me and my mother that changed my perception of Christianity. Because my mother said, and this also goes back to women being persuasive versus being manipulative. Because my mother said, if you don't want to go to church, you don't have to go to church. I'm not making you do something you don't want to do. If you don't want to go, then you don't have to go, right? Now, she said this because as my mother, I'm supposed to just suck that shit up and just go, right? She's supposed to have been allowed to be alleviated of her guilt, and her son is supposed to internalize her guilt and just follow suit. But because society has broken the fucking households, my father already spent the last 10 fucking years telling me to do what? PC. Don't do anything you don't want to fucking do. If somebody asks you to do something and you don't want to do it, don't do it. Don't lie for nobody. Don't lie for me. Don't lie for your mom. Don't lie for your friends. Don't lie. And if you feel like you're in a position to where you have to do something you don't want to do and you'll have to lie about it, don't do it. Right? 10 years of having this reiterated to me over and over again. This is the foundation. Stepfather is not the foundation because my mother never allowed me and the stepfather to have a relationship. The foundation is my father. Don't lie. Don't do things you don't want to fucking do. And if somebody asks you to lie, don't lie for them. If it's your mother, don't lie for her. If it's me, don't lie for me. If it's anyone else in the world, don't lie for them. Right? So when she said that, I said, okay, fine, I don't want to go to church. And so I threw my jacket on the floor, went to my room, turned my game back on. So now my mother wants to get all uppity and she wants to start screaming and yelling and you're gonna have to go and for whatever reason the universe moves the way the universe does. At this exact same moment, my uncle came over. He walked in the house like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand what is, hey, and I'm upset and he don't want to do this and he don't want to do that and my uncle was like, Mr. P, get your clothes, get dressed, go get in the car, go to church. And I was like, Mr. A, my mother said that if I don't want to go to church, I don't have to go to church. And my uncle was like, well, your mother is saying that you need to go. So you need to get dressed and go. And then my mother, and I did say that. And I don't understand why. He ain't trying to go. And then my uncle was just like, wait. My uncle is my mother's sister. So and he's like, you need to just get dressed and go. And she's like, well, I did say that he didn't have to go if he didn't want to go. And I don't understand why he's tripping and he acting like he ain't trying to go. And then he was like, wait, did you tell him he didn't have to go to church? Yeah, I said that. You said that he didn't have to go. Yeah. And what did he say? He didn't want to go. He said he didn't want to go because and he was just, she's just doing the woman thing. He was like, PC, get your jacket, let's go, we're leaving. Because it's like, you gave him permission not to go to church. And now you want to be mad at him because he don't want to go. You already told him he didn't have to go, and he just communicated to you that he doesn't want to have to go. So then why are you upset? And I'm illustrating this because I don't want to say women are manipulative, but they are persuasive. They are very persuasive. And my mother could have did what women typically do to young boys and young men and use that fucking what's that term? Dang, I wish I knew the name of the witches in Dune. I can't remember the actual name of the witches in Dune, but that thing that they did in Dune where they could whisper intent into your ear and then you would just do whatever it is they wanted you to do. Or like with Lucas, and I'm pretty sure Lucas got this from a woman, how sure, I don't mind, or like how in Lucas when he made the Force and how he said the Force is strong against the weak-minded. Females are persuasive in that way. I don't want to say they're manipulative. I think manipulation carries a negative connotation, but I do believe that females are muses. They have this capacity to inspire men to do things, or they have a way to get around our ego and our arrogance to humble. Kind of like how the Hawks center was always that woman. I don't know exactly. I can't remember the exact relationship they have. But when the Hawk would rage and hawk out and destroy the city, they would always have to bring that woman in, and she would always be like, Hawk, stop. She would always be able to get through all of that anger and be able to get Bruce to calm down and come back to reality, right? That has always been a thing that women inherently has, and I say they're persuasive because that's what it is. That woman, my mother, didn't do the manipulation thing. She didn't treat me like just some child that needs to be told what the fuck to do. She communicated effectively with me and tried to get me to come to my own realization of how important church was, but it wasn't fucking important. So instead of me coming to this realization of, yeah, church is important, I was raised outside of this house with my father, and I don't want to go. And if I would tell my father I didn't want to go to church, he would say, okay, fine, go finish playing your video games. But in the reality of the situation I was in with her, it's like there's just unnecessary bullshit energy. It's unnecessary BS because households don't have proper structure. Like there's no, and well, what are you negotiating with a kid for anyway? There was never a condition where my mother should have been sitting there having a discussion with me about it. But guess what happened? Like I said, my stepfather wasn't in line, so he wasn't the head of the house at the moment. He wasn't in line. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. So he wasn't in line with the house. So he wasn't able to communicate to me, hey, get your shit, let's go to church, right? So since that couldn't happen because of the reality of the dynamic of the world, welcome to the stream. Nice to see you logging in. But since he wasn't online and he wasn't able to do that, everything fell apart. Everything arbitrarily, unnecessarily fell apart. And that's pretty much the moment when, for me, Christianity became I'm not really a Christian moment for me. And it's not, I'm not a Christian because I hate Christians or I hate religion or I don't believe in God. It's, I don't associate myself with the idea that being a Christian is enough to be a good person. And I would rather be a good person than alliance myself with people that define themselves as Christian. And that was an important distinction for me at the age of 16 because it shaped the person I am. Like when Nessa asked me, do you feel like your life has been wasted because of where you are in the world? And I tell her, like I told myself when I was on the street thinking about it, no. I don't think that when my daughter's mother lied in court and accused me of being abusive and argumentative and arguing and fighting and wrote all these false accusations on paper about me so that she can control the relationship that I have with my daughter. So she can control the relationship she has with my daughter so that I couldn't be a father so she could get a check from me. My capacity not to go strangle her and murder her and wind up in prison because that's what would have happened, I don't find that as a character flaw. I don't find it as a character flaw. Why should I? There's no reason why I should have had to argue and fight and defend my desire to be a father to my own child. There was just no reason for that. And if just the world was structured properly, there would have been no need for that. The best way to prove that you want to be in a child's life is to just go get the child and spend time with them. But if you have a bunch of institutions in place that prevents you from just physically going to visit your child, when I moved in, I was homeless on the street. I was trying to build a relationship with you know what? I was staying with my uncle trying to make YouTube videos for my 2 cents. My father called me like, hey, you should come down here, we should get together, we should work so we could start a company and then me and you could be father and son and start a business. I was living with my stepfather, I was living with my uncle, everything was set up, everything was perfect. I could have started my YouTube career perfect. But you know what I did? I should go back to Washington, try to work with my father, and then try to build a relationship with my daughter. That was the decision. Did you see where I am right now? That was the decision I made. It was always for my daughter, for my daughter, for my daughter. And those aren't excuses. It's just every decision that I tried to make always was modified just enough for my daughter. And this is where I am now. And where is my daughter? Where is she? She's still with her mother. She's in her 20s. She's still with her mother. And I don't have a problem with that. But the reality is that this is how life goes. You don't have all the information. You don't know what's going on. I came down here to stay with my father so me and him could start a business. You know what he wanted to do? Same thing my stepfather wanted to do. Not be fucking right. Not be right. Just be wrong just enough to where we can't get anywhere. Arguing and fighting with me. Constantly wanting to treat me like shit. Constantly wanting to talk down to me. Constantly wanting to be negative. Like every time I encounter people, they always want me to understand how I'm not qualified, how I'm not good enough, and what I need to change about me so that I can be successful. But it's like, why should I become less than for you? For what? How does being less than who you are get you to where you're trying to be? How does doing less gain more? Because everybody believes in the second law of thermodynamics of a perpetual motion machine that you can put more energy in and get more energy out. You can put You can put in 1 joule of energy and get 100 joules out. You can put in $1 and get $10. It's not how life works. And when you're trying to be a good person, you understand that. When you understand that the most important value is being a decent human being, all the other sacrifices can't work. You can't put it out on the table to tell this person to turn your head so you can take 10 from them if you want to be a good person. You can make $9 real quick by distracting them with $1, but you have to be a bad person. You have to be unethical, immoral, and illegal in the process to gain more in a broken system. And I just never wanted to do that. So I've never felt like the problem that I had in life was I'm not showing up, because the conflict that I have is being a good, you should be a billionaire because you are a decent human being. But you're not going to become a billionaire in this world by being a decent human being. You're going to become a billionaire in this world by lying, cheating, murdering, stealing, robbing, killing, and not having empathy for the rest of the world. And that's a structure that was created by humanity. That's not a natural order thing. That's something we created. Europeans constantly write laws that exclude non-whites to better themselves at the sacrifice of each other. And it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. Why should the vast majority of people on the planet go without so that some of the minorities of the planet, because Caucasians are not the majority, Europe is not bigger than Africa, there are the largest group of people on the planet are the Asians. And the Asians are only the largest group of people on the planet because the Christian crusade went into Africa and wiped out a large group of the African people. I'm pretty confident that if we had statistics at the time of 300 years ago, you would have seen that the Africans outpopulated everyone else on the earth. But Europeans went into Africa and they wiped the vast majority of them out. And the generations that came after that, you don't see that now. If you do a statistics and ask, Alexa, what is the population of African Americans in America?
The African American population in the U.S. is 41,104,200 people, making up 12.4% of the total U.S. population.
Alexa, what is the total population of Africans on the earth?
The total population of Africa is 1.567 billion people as of January 2026.
So you have to add the 40 million to the 1.5 billion to get the correct value for how many African Americans actually are on the planet. And that's how these numbers differentiate themselves from each other. Alexa, what is the total population of Europeans and Caucasians on the earth?
The total population of Europeans and Caucasians on Earth is about 1.2 billion people. This includes 744 million in Europe and 480 million with European ancestry outside Europe.
Alexa, what is the total population of Chinese and Asian people on the earth?
The total population of Chinese people in Asia is about 1.41 billion.
1.41, 1.2, and 1.21. That shows, like, the fact that there's 1.4 billion people in China as the largest group and the African population is 1.2. It shows you this idea of these minorities and these majority values and how they really don't carry any actual weight. They don't carry any actual value. It's just a way to get you into this headspace of this idea of immigration and migration and all that. And there's another video coming. Like, I'm gonna have to really structure a better video for that. But there is a video where I want to correlate all of these different values when it comes to people and politics and social structures and just at these groups. But this video was really just like an introduction to the introduction of my life system, and I did a terrible job. But yeah, I think it's just time for me to go run. I could keep ranting and raving forever and ever and ever. Ironically enough, these streams don't work the way I need them to because this is supposed to help me communicate what I'm trying to do, but for whatever reason, no one actually shows up to the streams, which is fine. once I go running, then I'll have more active people in the stream. But it's fine. I'll keep the format. I think the format's a good one. But yeah, that's that's the My 2 Cent Life System in a nutshell. There's a 10-hour clock, 10-hour calendar, 10-hour degrees in a circle, 10 degrees in a circle. I will try to go into more detail on those things in the future. I just haven't gotten there yet. So rant's over. I need to do my homework. I need to work on more parts of more things with more parts of my business structure and everything else going on in life. Use large language models. Start using ChatGPT if you're not. If you don't, you're gonna get left behind and it's gonna suck for you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Keep being a good person. As always, thanks, my name is, and I've given you my 2 cents.